Hey, Laura J here to say, please come along for an exciting journey with me. I would love to invite you to be a peaceful inner warrior united with other peaceful inner warriors. So what does it mean to be a peaceful inner warrior united? Well, I've been on quite the epic journey that has taken me around the world to meet the best players of the game of life. And my desire has always been to share the discoveries that I have found, and I'm going to be doing that with the Sacred Sojourn of the soul, which is the spiritual version of the hero's journey. And then there is also the special practice that Peaceful Inner Warriors United can use to honor all of who and whose we truly are. Peaceful Inner Warriors United is a movement to really help people go inward and to understand that peace is not just a state of being we want to experience in the world. Peace is a state of being we need to experience within ourselves and know how to access when chaos strikes the world, like what we're dealing with now. So peaceful stands for passion, enthusiasm, authenticity, clarity, and encouragement. Full is about finding your tribe, understanding what's important to you and what's yours, loving what arises, and letting go of your attachment to the not now that keep you out of where all your power is, which is in this present now moment. And inner actually stands for individual needs necessitate emotional resilience and resonance. So really understanding the law of attraction in action, how our thoughts are things that we bring into reality when we put our energy onto them for long enough for them to actually gain the momentums that oftentimes our energies show up with when we're not really wanting to face those difficult emotions that seem to hit us like a ton of bricks. Well, what I would love to be able to do is help you actually be the warrior of your own inner world, the warrior of your own emotions, to understand how to bring a portable sense of home with you everywhere you go. And that is what it means to be united with others who are willing to do the inner work so that we can all benefit in the long run. Peaceful Inner Warriors United. I am so excited to actually be sharing with you the special practice that you can create. Now you're going to have to actually create that special practice on your own, but what I'm going to give you today is an introduction to the framework that you can use to structure the practice that is really going to help you truly be the warrior that takes a stand for what you believe in and that has the ability to withstand the storms that come upon you when you go through the Sacred Sojourn of the soul, which is the S in the special practice. Now, the Sacred Sojourn of the soul is the hero's journey from a soulful perspective that I'm going to actually be doing as a whole video in the next piece. So to start with, what does it mean to be sacred? It means to reverse the letters of being scared into sacred. So if you actually think about yourself when you're in that scared side of yourself, you have no ability to be present into this moment because you're somewhere else, you're worried, you're fearful, you're in your head. And so to be sacred is to be in your heart. To be sacred is to be fully present where we are. And sojourn is ultimately the sacred journey that each of us walk in order for our soul to gain the experiences it needs in order to evolve, as we're all here to do, as the ascended masters in training, that each of us have the ability to do if only we are willing to realize how great we could be, if only we realize that this you too can do and more. Someone famous once said that. Now, the Sacred Sojourn of the soul begins at home, in the comfort zone of the known, where everything's generally, you know what to expect, and it happens the same way in a slightly different fashion maybe, but ultimately, it's not where we really want to be specifically, but we haven't yet figured out where we're going to go instead, which is what happens when the call comes in. So the second stage of the Sacred Sojourn of the soul is the call for more. The call for more expression of what you came here to share with the world, that only you can. There is only one you, there is only one me, and if we don't do what we came here for, who will? No one will. That's why the graveyard is said to be the richest place in the world, because so many people have died with their song left unsung that it's become a wealthy place that no one can do anything with. And so instead of letting our life be what adds to the wealth of the graveyard, instead it's about moving beyond the third stage after we've heard the call for more that call us to leave home, and then we veil that unrest with coping mechanisms of choice, whatever that might be. And even knowing that problems are a currency of exchange. We get attention, we get energy when we're talking about problems, just in the same way we would about if we were talking about possibility. So we have to really understand and be clear about our own motivations. We have to understand when we are self-soothing, why. We have to really have that relationship with ourselves where we're able to ask ourselves the difficult questions and sit in the space that help the answers emerge, because they will, if we are willing to actually sit with them. And when we're veiling the unrest, that is when we're staying out of the present moment where all of our power is. Until the fourth stage, we meet the one. We meet the one that believes in us enough for us to believe in ourselves, so that we can actually step out onto the path of the unknown through the valley of transformation that takes us to uncharted territories, where literally we are the ones that are mapping that territory for the ones that we return back to see and share the journey with when we return. Meeting the one is when you actually meet somebody, and maybe it's yourself, that says you can do this. I don't know how you're going to do this, but I believe in you. I believe that you wouldn't have it in your heart if you didn't have the ability to fulfill it, because we do not live in a universe with a mean creator. And so I hope that when you meet the one, that it's in you. But the likelihood is it might take meeting someone on the outside for you to get the example of what it means to be able to be the one for yourself. And that's what you're going to get in the Peaceful Inner Warriors United community. But first we have to leave, and meeting the one is how we oftentimes gain the confidence in ourselves to accept that journey and to accept the call. So to embark on the journey is the fifth step. After we have veiled the unrest and then met the one that will help us say yes to ourselves, that's when then we enter into the liminal phase of change, which is where the world that we had before that life no longer exists, and the life that we're creating doesn't yet exist, and we're in that dark liminal phase in between where we were and where we're going, and it feels really dark, and it feels painful sometimes, and it feels really quiet when we're in that space of not quite sure. And every new level comes with a new devil, with higher rent and new neighbors, and so we might not know our neighbors yet, which is what makes it feel extra quiet. And so when we're in that phase in between, we have to really be graceful with ourselves through those trials and tribulations, those experiences that stretch us and help us become the one that we were waiting for before, and now realize we're it. We're the players on the field. We're the ones that came here to save ourselves. When you go through those trials and tribulations, you're going to meet a variety of teachers. Some kindergarten teachers that dust you like a feather, whereas you're going to get some university teachers that come in and hit you like a 2x4 or a bus, take you out entirely. You're going to meet a lot of different teachers in those trials and tribulations. And it requires us to actually go through the dark night of the ego. The dark night with a K, because that's where the victim's at the bottom looking up to a rescuer to save them from the punisher, who is ultimately operating on Cartman's drama triangle, keeping us feeling pressed at the bottom like it's all too much and everything's on top of us. And when we're in that place where the ego is having a slow death and clawing its way to the finish line, that's when we understand that ego is edging God out. But it's also the part of us that loves us enough to keep us safe. So respecting that and then moving out of the fear into the faith of the dark light of the soul, where we see the fight between the fearful and the faithful playing out on the outside, because it's playing out so fiercely on the inside. And when we choose to actually feed the wolf that will win, that is good, that is then when we can step onto the pyre of our own crucifixion, where we actually become the phoenix that rose from the ashes of the life that we had before we accepted the adventure and journey that took us into the innermost cave, that helped us then meet the one that was waiting to be birthed the whole time. And when we have went through that phoenix process of rising from the ashes of our own transformation, then we step into the integration phase of needing to actually figure out how to put all of the things that we went through into context so people get it. Understanding that after you've integrated those experiences, you then embody a new energetic signature, and people say, "What's changed about you? I don't quite get it." That experience is when you've changed your energetic signature. So nothing about you overtly has changed, and yet people experience you differently because you are now embodying new keys that you can share with others in the final stage of contribution. And when you actually get to that place of contribution, of being able to share all that you went through in the journey that took you out of your home zone to follow a call that you didn't know whether you could do because you'd never done it before, and so you didn't have a clue whether you had the keys. But what you knew was that you were called and that you needed to go, and so you did. And when you did, you became the one that you were hoping would come for you all along. That like a flower, we have to go out to get the experience, and then we have to come back to the tribe, which is what the Peaceful Inner Warriors United experience is all about. What I have found is that for those of us who people see to be lighthouses in this world, that emit a lot of light and that uplift people, and we're constantly doing what we can to make this world a better place, what I know is that boats don't know how to support lighthouses when lighthouses fall. Boats get out of the way. Lighthouses need to know how to find one another, so that if there is a point when the storms get so strong that the wind feels like it's going to take the lighthouse down, that lighthouse knows that you've got people. You've got the one that is there for you, because you've connected yourself to a community that help you become that for yourself. Because as you step out into each of those stages to get the experience, you then come back to a solid foundation of people that want to support you and cheer for you and won't make excuses for your limitations the way that so many others who need you to stay small in order to stay on their level will do. And that's not any disrespect or judgment against the ones that will try to undermine or sabotage our success or growth because they don't want to have to stretch up and maybe can't stretch up to quite the same level that what we need to do in order to do what we came here for. Instead of judging them for that need for us to be what they need us to be for them, instead of judging that, it's about being compassionate and extending love and forgiveness and being able to really be there with them, except not necessarily having to stay there with them, because we really need to call for personal accountability and the willingness for us to move and step out of the comfort zone in order to do what's required. Right now, we're going through the restructuring of our self-image personally and collectively. So really understanding and having a physical practice to honor the vessel that transports our soul through this life in is very important. And it's not just about how we move the body, it's also even where we keep the body. So the P of the special practice is actually physiology. So our physical body is the vessel that transports our soul through this lifetime. And what we have to really do is obviously honor our physical body with food, water, rest, and exercise. But what we also need to make sure is that we're keeping ourselves inspired and engaged in our environment. So what's our home life like? What's the home environment like? How can we spice that up so that we enjoy being there a little more? And then also with the earth that we all share. Being in resonance with the earth is an important piece to a special practice, because if we're in tune with the heartbeat of the earth, then we're actually in tune with the moment. Now the E is very near and dear to my heart and yours too, because it's emotion. It's emotional awareness. And the Highrise of Emotional Awareness is actually the theory that Abraham, the consciousness channeled through Esther Hicks, brought forward with the emotional guidance system, which has 22 different emotions on 2 different spectrums, one going downward and one going up. And what's interesting is that I have taken these 22 different levels and applied them to the theory of an apartment building. It's the same address top to bottom, but a completely different experience depending on whether we're in the bottom, the middle, or the penthouse. Now, why this is relevant is because your emotions are ultimately the energies in motion that need to move in order for us to really see things for how they truly are. Otherwise, they become like energy veils of evil that make us live backwards. If you spell evil and live backwards, then you'll see it's an anagram, which I quite love, and words too, which isn't going to necessarily be part of the special practice, but they do factor in a really huge way, because ultimately our words are ultimately swords when we actually understand how to wield them from a sacred perspective instead of a scared one. In Scrabble, scared and sacred, same letters, just different ordering of the creative energy that we use when we're either reactive or creative. Same situation, same letters, different perspective, different experience altogether based on where we put those energies. Now, the conscious mind is a big part of the C, but it's not the whole piece, because core beliefs is actually part of the C in the special practice, because we really need to understand how we even get beliefs in the first place, and then how to actually structure those beliefs into a belief system that is going to support us instead of undermine us. So those core beliefs tie into the conscious mind, subconscious mind, and the superconscious mind, the akashic field that all energy exists within. If you understand time from a different perspective, more like a multidimensional layer cake instead of the linear timeline that we've been taught to think about, things start to make a lot more sense. But we'll get into that later, because I represents intuition. Your intuition is like the guide your soul hired ahead of time to guide you through this life. So if you don't understand how your intuition speaks to you, whether it's claircognizance of clear knowing, or whether it's clairaudience of clear hearing, or clear visual where you're actually able to see things in a way that other people can't, you just know things, that's just your intuition, and it speaks to you in a way that is unique to you, that you really need to do the diligence of actually figuring out what that language is to be able to work with yourself with. Because spirit is always speaking to us. It just doesn't always make it through us unless we have become willing to actually be the vessel that becomes hollow so that the light can flow through us. Now, A in special practice represents alignment. And alignment is so important, because if we're in any time other than this present moment right here where we are, how do we possibly expect to be fully powerful in the present moment if we're elsewhere? So doing some soul fragment recall and actually going back to extract the parts of us that got locked in past emotional traumas and experiences, to actually go back into those spaces, to recollect those soul fragments, is going to be what helps us align with the present moment, this present now that is where all of our power truly lies. And that then takes us into the L, which I always saw the L in a different way. Love and bubbles was originally what I was going to call it, because of just how love and excitement bubbles up for me. And I don't know whether that's the same for you. I'd love to know how excitement shows up for you. But I will say that the ego actually perceives fear and excitement the same way. So please do understand that when love and bubbles show up, That's actually your intuition letting you know there's information here that's ready to flow, and that you can either stay in that flow or you can try to control, constrict, contract things, and ultimately jam that flow. And you've got to decide by becoming a responsible leader of yourself, first and foremost. Leadership training is generally available to ones that make it to management or supervisory positions. But how often is leadership training offered to regular people? Well, what I say is that we're all leaders, because we have to lead ourselves first and foremost. We cannot lead others where we have dared not venture ourselves. So the L in the special practice is about becoming a responsible leader to yourself first and foremost, so that you can be that leader for others. The leader that others are already watching. So then they can see you doing congruent things, and then they say, that's the kind of leader that I would like to have. Because truly, we have lost a lot of really important and significant role models. And there are a lot of people that are doing things that are not what they even believe specifically. It's just what is the most convenient stance to take based on where you're aligned politically, socially, culturally. What we really need to understand, though, what I've learned, and I'll bring into what I share, is how the law fits into leadership. So that's been a deep dive that I have been really stretched and grown by through this pandemic, where I spoke out at a rally and then got an offense and have been fighting it with notices, and actually learning my rights and claiming my rights, and actually non-consenting to the BS that I'm being told was me breaking a rule that was new, that technically there's so much to what's going on. We won't get into that at this point, because hopefully by the time you've watched this in years to come, it won't be the same situation at all. But the reality is that if we don't know the law, if we don't know the rules of the game, how do we expect to play well? If you expect to lead anyone where you haven't went, you're going to be walking that path together, encountering the obstacles and the challenges together. And they're going to be looking to you to advise them, and you've got no experience and have no insight to offer beyond what you think could work for them, but now you're in the situation too. It's less effective than if you've actually been willing to go where you wish to go and where you wish to lead others, which is exactly what I'm doing, and why I've created this formula for you to be able to use, as well as the system for Peaceful Inner Warriors United. So I've led myself through the darkest days, weeks, months, years of my life to be able to emerge with insights and secrets and tips that I wish to impart to you. And that's what I'll do in the workshops and the courses that we do following on from here, which is your choice how far you want to go on that journey with me. But what I will say is that each of us are here for a specific reason, and it takes a community of common unity to help us remember what we're here for, to have faith in ourselves enough to actually go for it, and to have a team ready to celebrate us when we win. That's power. And that's what I wish for you. So please do leave a comment below what this message means to you and for you. Please do make sure you like the video, and also share it with a friend who would benefit from gaining access to these insights too. We'll see you in the next video. Laura J. Namaste, Namago.